So we're coming to the near the end of this first essay, Hasidic discourse, which is written in this book, TorahOr, by the first Rebbe of Chabad. And its purpose is to explain the deep hidden meaning that's relevant to us, to our soul, to our service of God, which is found in the Torah. Every sentence of the Torah is packed with directions and meaning and inspiration and motivation and how to serve the creator of the universe, how to come to love God, the creator of the universe that took the Jews out of Egypt, how to have a personal, intimate relation, because he's creating us, he's creating me, he's creating you, he's providing for us. But most important is that he's giving us the greatest gift of all, and that is responsibility. Every human being is responsible, and it begins with the Jews. So we're responsible to the creator of the universe to act, think, speak, feel in the proper way. Here we go. Just like anyone that's part of any group that's larger than himself, he's expected a certain degree of loyalty and to obey by the rules, right? You work in a business, you're in an orchestra, you're on a sports team, you're a part of an army, you work in a hospital, whatever you are, you're a doctor, you're a lawyer. There are certain loyalty which is necessary, and a certain code of deeds and acts and values that you have to have. Well, the same thing with the biggest of pictures of all is why we're here in this world. We're put in the world, and here we are. And the fact that we're here means that God chose us to be alive, Jew or not Jew. And that's what the Jews are chosen for. The Jews are chosen for this purpose, to educate the world to exactly that, to how important they are in the eyes of God. Okay, but the Jews, a little bit more is expected of them, and that's why the Jews were given the Holy Temple. The Jews were given the Holy Temple, which this added on hundreds of new obligations as far as action and deed and speech and attitude goes. But on the other hand, it showed a tremendous closeness of us to God. Like a person who is chosen to be the chief assistant of the king of the country. We don't have any more kings anymore, but used to be a king. And the kings got all corrupt. But our king is the king of the universe. He's ultimately good. He creates us. So how do we do this? So, well, we had the temple. At the time of the temple, as the Jews were like brothers to God, right? They were brothers. And that was symbolized by the two statues that were on the cover of the ark, and they were the face of like two angels, it says, and they were facing one another. And this is to show that we were facing God and God was facing us. Remember, that's what we learned the first few days. But, says the Rebbe, since the Holy Temple was destroyed, that's what King Solomon is saying in his Song of Songs. It should only be that you were a brother to me. Again, Mi tencha ka'achli. There's a sentence. It's the first sentence in the last chapter of Shir Hashem. There's only 8 chapters. Last is Mi tencha ka'achli yonek shedei imi emtsoacha b'chutz. Who would give it? Like in the Shir Hashem, there's no simple meaning. It's all allegory and metaphors. Mi tencha. Who will give it? Who would only make it that you were a brother to me? Nursing from the breasts of my mother, I find you outside, I would kiss you. Also, no one would disgrace me. What does that mean? So the Rebbe is explaining, you should be a brother to me. This is the Jewish people requesting from God, please build a third temple. And now we're in the time of exile. Please be a brother to me like you were in the time of the third temple. React to what we do. Give us inspiration. Give us blessing. Reveal your holiness and your creative power and your love in the world to everybody. Let everybody feel it. You should only be like a brother to me. The Jewish people first, though, because the Jewish people have this tremendous obligation to fix the world. We will both nurse from the breasts of my mother. What is it talking, says the Rebbe? That's talking about the Torah, and especially the interpretation of the rabbis of the Torah. I think we did this yesterday, yes? Says, right, that's talking about the oral Torah. That's what's talking about the oral Torah. Those people who watched yesterday's class will see that I did not really have control over the machine over here. So there was a lot of times that I was talking and I thought I was pointing to something, but it was just a picture of me. Because for some reason the other one didn't flip on. Anyway, I hope you got the point. The words were there anyway. The words were there. The pictures wasn't. So that's what's called the written Torah is called the wisdom of my father. The the oral Torah, the explanation of the Torah Shebal Peh, the Talmud, from all these great rabbis, the Talmud says that most of them had the power to raise the dead. That is nevertheless called the wisdom. That's called the understanding of my mother. Understanding of my mother, and that terms. And that's learning nowadays by learning the Talmud, by learning the Midrash, the Halahs, how the written Torah is explained properly. By means of learning this, that means that we are God. That's what God decided, right? God decided that when we learn the Torah, because the Torah is His wisdom and His understanding, so when we get it inside of Him, so we are, so to speak, when we get it inside of us, when we get these ideas, we learn the Torah, we understand them. So this puts us, so to speak, on the same footing as God. We're equal, we're like brothers. So that's the importance of learning the Torah. When you learn the Torah now, true, we don't have a holy temple. It's not exactly the same thing, but in a way, it's even more internal. It's more internal. We take the ideas of the Torah, and understand them. You don't have to learn the whole entire tractate. Learn one idea of the Talmud. One idea of the Talmud, understand it well. That idea is God's wisdom. Hard to believe, but it's harder to believe that God is creating us. He's creating everybody all the time. That's even harder to believe. That the Torah is God's wisdom, and because God is eternal, so this is what God is thinking right now, and we got it inside of us. That's what it says. Anyone who learns laws every day is promised that he will have a place in the world to come. Like it explains along, okay. And so that, okay, after that it says, you should be a brother to me. We understood what that means. It means that we are on the same, so to speak, level of God as God. God reacts to us, we react to Him, like the two statues on the nursing from the breasts of my mother means that now that we're in exile, at least we can nurture, suckle from the breasts of the mother. What is the breast of the mother? Understanding. The Talmud. The Talmud is called the breasts of my mother because mother represents understanding, and the Talmud is understanding ideas of God. That's what we have now. Right? The Torah is God's will, God's wisdom, even the opinions of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Tarfon and Hillel and Shammai and all these people that seem to be people just like us. And they are people just like us. Moses was also a person just like us. But God was speaking through them. Not everybody gets this God speaking through them. There's a lot of fakers, very easy to fake. There's false prophets, right? And the first temple was filled with them, false prophets. These people, God was really speaking through them, and He was speaking, saying true interpretations of what the Torah is. And so, okay, then after that it says, I will find you outside. What does it mean, I will find you outside? This refers to working men. And what about people that can't learn Torah? What about people that haven't got the time to learn Torah? I mean, that's like 99% of the Jews, 99.9. to sit and learn Torah all the time. You have to make money, you have to have a family. And some people, they go out and work and it just confuses them the whole day. They can't get their mind settled. They can go to a class. Says that's what King Solomon said. You will be to me like a brother. That's in the time of the temple. We should be. How can you be a brother now? By learning the Torah, the oral Torah. By means of that, we will nurse from the breasts of my mother. That's the explanation of the Torah, the Talmud, the Midrash, the laws. I will find you outside. Kai, this refers to Bali Asakim. This refers to working men. Even though that it is impossible for them to be learning the Torah constantly. And they would be, in order to be this level of what says nursing from the breasts of my mother. That's learning the Talmud, we said. That's what King Solomon referred to. Al Yadei, by means of Dalet Al Mashalacha, or being surrounded by the understanding of the law. It's called the Dalet Amos, the surrounding ideas. The ideas of the Torah surround me, my domain. So a person can't learn the Torah now. He's really messed up, right? Now he's really in a bad situation. We don't have the Talmud. We don't have the Holy Temple. We don't have the Holy Temple. There's all these fakers and weirdos and false religions and liars and cheaters and false prophets, right? And they have millions, billions of followers. And the only way you can save yourself is by learning the Talmud. And there's some people that they can't learn the Talmud. So we haven't got a temple. We're surrounded by these evil waters. And what about learning the Talmud? You can't learn the Talmud either. It's just so confusing. What is a person supposed to do? Mikol Makom, nevertheless, Aleim, it says, the Mikol Makom, nevertheless, even though you haven't got a temple and you can't learn the Torah, and there's all these difficulties in the world, nevertheless, and I will find you outside. You can be found outside of learning the Torah, outside of the temple. That's what King Solomon said. How can it be found outside? What does it mean? And we find the Kodesh Baruch Hu. It also says, Lashon Koneh. By God, it says that God is also a businessman. Where does it say? It says, Koneh Shemayim V'Oretz. It says that God took possession, he bought the heavens and the earth. And also the rabbis say, Chamisha Kinyanim Kaneh Kodesh Baruch Hu. There are 5 possessions in Pirkei Avot. It says there are 5 things that God took possession of. The heaven, the earth. It says Abraham was one of them. The Beit HaMikdash was one. So if so, what does it mean? It means that God pulled something into his domain. That's what it means, taking possession. Koneh, to buy. What do you mean you buy something? You go into a store, you give the person money, and you pull this thing, the other thing becomes yours. The thing didn't change. You go and you buy a car. The car doesn't change. It just changes hands. It gets pulled from the store into your garage. Right? But the thing didn't change. It just changed possession. It just changed owners. The same thing, God is also a businessman. He also takes things into his possession. What does that mean? That's what it means. That even businessmen, even people that work outside, they can also be close to God, just like brothers. How so? You can see if it says, it's one of the 10 commandments, right? 10 commandments, 6 days. The fourth commandment in the 10 commandments. 6 days God made the heavens and the earth. And on the 7th day he rested. Call a Shabbos, and and every Shabbat that we come to, even though it might be thousands and thousands of days after the creation of the world, right? The world was created 5,782 years ago and a half years ago, right? And since then, every year has 52 Shabbos in it. So multiply 5,782 by 52, right? And how much do you get? What is it? 250,000, something like that. You get 250,000 Shabbos. Is that right? In any case, whatever it is, you get a lot. 250,000 Shabbos there have been. Each Shabbos is called the 7th day. How could each Shabbos be called the 7th day? Even if there was only just Shabbos, there weren't 6 more days. This is the 250,000th day. How is it the 7th day? It says every Shabbos is called the 7th day because this cycle repeats itself. It's a Shabbat to God. So to speak, the 7th day, that goes back to God, and it starts the cycle brand new. How can we call the Shabbos now the 7th day? Shari Kavar Avru Ravavas Yamim. So many days. From the beginning, from the creation of the world. Right? The 7th day, 250,000 Shabbos, multiply 5,700. Here, 1 second, I'll have my thing over here. 5,700. Here we go. How many days are there in the week? Look at this. Watch this. I have to get the computer over here. Never that strong in mathematics, to tell you the truth. Here we go. We have 5,782 years times 365. 365, right? So what's the answer? 2,110,430 days have passed since the creation of the world. How can we possibly call this coming Shabbat the 7th day? How can it be the 7th day? Doesn't make any sense. It's at bare minimum the 5,780. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, I looked at the wrong number. It's at the very bare minimum. It's the 2 millionth day of the year of since creation. Since creation, bare minimum, 2,110,430. So we got 4 more years to go. 2,110,433. This coming Shabbos will be the 2 millionth day. How can we say it's not the 2 millionth day? It's the 7th day. What do you mean the 7th day? How can that possibly be? I was alive 7 days ago, right? And there was a world. Everything. This is not the 7th day. I was even alive 2 weeks ago. This should be at least the 14th day. Says the answer. The Hine Mitzvah we find by God. It says also. Oh, I'm sorry. What's the thing went back up? Lichior at first glance. How is it possible to call it the Shabbat now, the 7th day? There's already been tens of thousands of days. Here we said 2 million days have gone by since the beginning of the world. Ad Shabbasos Elu until these Shabbatot, every Shabbat. I can understand the first Shabbat when God created the world, there was the 7th day. But the second Shabbat after that, it was the 14th day. And the Shabbat after that, right, it should be the 21st day. So how does it work out? These 6 days, these correspond to the 6 emotions of God. We said that God has a personality. Well, this is what's called his emotions. Shebehem, that by means of them, but all you've done, and through them, God created the world by means of what's called his emotions. The first day, there was light. That corresponds to what's called chesed, God's love. Second day, it says there was a division. That corresponds to God's gevura. Afterwards came the 7th day, Shabbat, who aliyotam, all of the days get elevated to their source. Umakoram, in their origin, lamayla. They all the other days is coming down. On the 7th day, God didn't do anything. Everything just went back up to its source. Kachu gamken b'kol Shabbat. That's what happens every Shabbat. The whole system starts over again. Because as we get into the week, we forget that there's a creator. The 7th day is the creator's day. That in the 6 days of work, who you read, this is coming down of God's emotions from what we talked about before, Atzilut, the highest dimension of creation. That's called Atzilut, pure godliness, into the lower dimensions, which are called Bria, Yetzira, and finally to this world, Asiya, in order what? To Borer. Why is God creating the world? God is coming down, his power every week, right? Since the creation of the world, what do we say, 250,000 Shabbos ago? Maybe my numbers were wrong. Anyway, 250,000 Shabbos ago, 300,000 Shabbos ago, there was 300,000 Shabbos ago, God began this process of creating the world Why is God is creating the world. God himself is creating the world. Why is he doing it? He's creating the world constantly, 7 days. Why is he doing it? Because in the seventh day, he created man, and God wants man to refine the world. And therefore, God comes into the world and gives man inspiration and power and creation and life in order to the purpose to refine the world. And afterwards, on the seventh day, everything goes back up to its source, gets refreshed, right? Like even in the football games, you have the quarter time, right? And the coach comes out, says, remember who you're fighting for, remember who you're fighting against, we must win. And it gives them inspiration. Well, that's us also. We have the seventh day, as everything goes back up to the coach, to God. Everything goes back up to its source, Davka, on this day. And this gives us, a reset, to remind us who we're serving, where we're coming from, who's helping us to serve God. Says that's the seventh day. The seventh day, everything goes back up to its source. But this is only for the Jews now. This is only for the Jewish people. Shabbat is purely for the Jewish people. The 10 commandments, true, were given for all mankind, but not all the commandments that are in there are for all mankind. Especially the commandment of Shabbat. Shabbat is only for the Jews. Shabbat. Afterwards, on Shabbat, everything goes back up to its source. Davka b'yom umida shvis, on the day, and on this aspect of the seventh day, which this is what's called God's kingship. Everything goes back up to its source. That's what it means. That's when God takes possession of everything. We see that God is a businessman. He invests his energy 6 days, and the seventh day he takes possession. That's what it means. It says on the seventh day that God finished, but the word kalato means to finish, but it also means to have desire. You say longing. Kalta nafshi, my soul goes back up. Like we saw, l'cha dodi likrat kala. Kala means the ability to go back up. Boi kala. We say that the Shabbat is called the bride of God, but the word kala also means to expire, to go up, to have longing. Lochin, therefore, Omrim, it says in one of the blessing we make after we eat the fruits of Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, or wine. There's a special blessing which is called Me'ayin Sheva. No, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. No, we say after right. Oh, we don't say this. In Chabad, we don't say this. Some people say there's a blessing which is called Ma'ayin Sheva. It says Kone Shamayim V'Oretz, that God, Kone, it says it other places also, but in any case, Kone Shamayim V'Oretz, that God possesses the heavens and the earth. We say it also after Shabbat. We say it after Shabbat in the blessing. One second. And just from the blessing, give me one moment here. One moment. I know we say this after Shabbat. 1 second. No. Shomer Yisrael says Shabbat. Where is this? Excuse me. 1 moment. No, it's not here. Oh. No. This we say in the I get it. Yes. Mali Shabbat, right? I'm sorry, I got confused a bit. In the prayers, the first prayers of Shabbat, the nighttime prayer of Shabbat, when Shabbat comes in, when we finish the prayer, we say a blessing, which is something like the blessing, the Shmon Esrei we say on Shabbat, and it ends Kone Shamayim V'Oretz, that God takes possession of the heavens and the earth. What does it mean takes possession of the heavens and the earth? Oh, there we say, and the Ma'ayin Shabbat, this is the blessing we say after the evening prayer of Shabbat, which repeats the 7 blessings that we say in the standing prayer of Shabbat. So it says, Konei Shamayim V'Aretz, it's the God takes possession of the heavens and the earth, because that's the whole thing of Shabbat. Hine Eliyot Olamot. That's the whole thing on Shabbat, so to speak. On the 6 days of the week, God pays for the world. He puts energy in, and on Shabbat he takes possession. That's what it means, that everything which was refined in the 6 days of the week, it is raises up and it's included in Shabbat. This is something like purchasing something. Like a businessman takes, he first of all gives money first, and then after, by means of that, he receives afterwards this things that he's purchasing. So to speak, also by means of God putting energy into the world for the 6 days of creation, and this repeats itself every week. This God puts his energy in. Why? In order to refine the world. It says to raise up the sparks of holiness which are concealed in the world. By means of this, it comes down on that on the last day, that everything that we did in the whole week raises up on Shabbat. Mi Turi de Pruda, from what's called these mountains of separation, like I said before, this turbulent waters of the 6 days of the week, and it raises up. That's called the public domain, the Rishuta Yachid, to the private domain. Yechidu Shel Olam, that God is the one, single one of the world. So it's just like the car that's in the dealership, right? It's available to anybody that wants to. But if you go and pay for it, then it becomes yours. The same thing, the world. The world is available for everybody. But God is putting energy into it, and all through the Jewish people, and all that the Jewish people work on, put energy into the world properly as God takes possession of it. When? On Shabbat. That's the whole thing. That's in a small way, every 6 days. So is also in a big way the whole exile of the Jewish people. The Jewish people, first of all, when they were in Egypt, that's like the weekdays. Ubakalu Gamkain, but everything is by means of that they put in this energy, and finally God took them out. He elevated them, raising up the sparks that are fallen there. And that's with it, like for instance, who are the sparks? Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Meir, Ovadia. These are people that came from converts. By similar, when we say Shema Yisrael, V'asafta Deganecha, it says that you should work in your fields and gather up your wheat. What is this talking about, gathering up the wheat? Most Jews are not farmers. What type of wheat are we supposed to gather up? It says you will gather up, if you do what I say, you'll gather up the wheat. Who wants to gather up wheat? I go to the store and I buy bread. Who's gathering up the wheat? It says this is also a metaphor for us working in the world and gathering up the diversion of the world to Echad, to the oneness of God, V'ahavta, and having love for God. A person, namely, is some people can't learn Torah. Some people are not so good at learning the Torah and understanding and nurturing from the breasts, so to speak, the understanding of God. But what? They can work in the physical world in order to provide for themselves, Ubeiton, and their family. This is a tremendous descent from where it's supposed to be. But by means of this, Nasa Achar there is made afterwards an elevation. Shemit Palel, when a person prays in the power, with the power and the energy of the food that he worked for. And he says, God, you are one. Shema Yisrael Hashem, Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And you come to love God with self-sacrifice because God is creating you. And because God gave us the Torah, and God is creating the whole world. And we are in the world working in order to unite everything in the world, everything of the creation to the Creator. Because that's really the truth. That's the way things really are. Therefore, when this person works in the world, and when he prays, right, in the morning prayer, the evening prayer, before he goes to sleep, he says Shema Yisrael, unites everything to the oneness of God. Then what happens? It becomes like the prayers are called Olat Tamid. It's called like one of the sacrifices, raising up the sparks of the world. Every prayer that a person makes in the weekday, this raises up into the prayers of Shabbat. So if so, we have 3 ways to serve God in the time of exile. One of them is by means of the commandments. Another one is by learning the Torah. That's the main one. Another one is by prayer. When we work in the world for the working man, and he elevates everything that he's done in the world by prayer. Prayer elevates also the Torah and the commandments also. Praying, the Jewish prayers are not really centered so much from asking God for things. That you're supposed to do also. You're supposed to request from God everything that you need. There was one great rabbi that he would sit in before the food would be in front of him. And before he would eat the food, he would pray to God, please God, give me food. Because he knew that God was creating everything brand new every time, every second. If so, that's the idea of prayer, is lifting our energy, our attention, our heart, our trust, our love to our Creator. He's creating everything. He's the one that gave us the Torah. That's called elevating. Elevating, like taking a puzzle and putting it together. The little pieces were meaningless. You put it together, oh, there's a big meaning. Suddenly the whole world can become more meaningful. And that's the way the working man becomes a brother with God. That's what it says. That's what it means that I found you outside. That even the people who are businessmen and they're working in the physical world, or they're plumbers, or they're doctors, they're lawyers, or they're whatever it is, gardeners, anything that a person does, you work in the world, God is also found outside. Because by means of your work in the world, you raise up what's called sparks of meaning, to the oneness of God. But call Yisrael and all the Jewish people, they can do this. Shahari, because Dina, the Gemara, the law of the Talmud is the Parsha Rishona, that the first paragraph of Shema Yisrael, Tzricha Kavana, you have to have the proper intention. At least for the first 6 words. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, you have to have intention for God. And that you can't just say it. If so, what does it mean? It means that you're elevating your thoughts to the Creator. That's why it says you put your hand over your eyes when you say Shema. By the way, it says that there was the Chidah that said that even non-Jews should say Shema Yisrael. Because the sentence says, listen, Jews, God is our God, God is one. That non-Jews should know that the Jewish people are special, they're God's representatives, to show that the world is not our world, it's God's world. According to that's what it means, that you have to give over all of your life, all of your will to the Creator when you say that word echad. Listen, Jews, God is our God. God is one, echad. This is in every single Jew. Every Jew has this. Sha'av she'en lo mesirat nefesh. Every Jew has this desire to completely devote himself, surrender himself to the Creator of the universe. And everything that he does, says, thinks. And even though that he doesn't know it, nevertheless, every Jew has this total self-sacrifice, this total self-devotion to God, whether actually or potentially. Every Jew. Even the most simple of simple Jews is able to give his life for the Creator. for Judaism. There's a lot of stories about Jews that, that especially in the Inquisition, the Crusades, the Inquisition, as far as I know, and this could be wrong, that Hitler was the only one that didn't give the Jews a chance to convert. Usually the others, the Muslims, the Christians, they said, you convert, we'll let you live. Right? Tie them up to the stake. You convert to our religion, we'll let you live. If not, you get burned. There were a lot of Jews that said, Shema Yisrael, burn me. Jews that weren't even religious Jews. And they said, okay, I'm willing to convert. Right? All of a sudden they tie them up to the stake and they say, Shema Yisrael at the last second. What happened? By means of this, it says, because every Jew has in potential the desire, the ability, the nature to be totally devoted to Hashem and not think about yourself at all. No Jew wants to die. Who wants to die? But at that moment, you're not thinking about dying. You're not thinking about living. You're thinking just about the Creator. I can't go against the Creator. I can't deny my Judaism. Well, every Jew has this in potential, not just when he's tied up to the stake, but everything that he does, says in the course of the whole day, to give his will over to God, to give your will over to God, not to eat lobster is much less painful than being willing to die on the stake. Every Jew is willing to die on the stake, but there's a lot of Jews that will not give up lobster. That's insane. But that's the insanity of the evil of the selfish impulse, the Yitzhar. It makes a person crazy. But in fact, every Jew is willing to suffer even death, not to go against God. How much more so to suffer a little bit of discomfort, right? Every Jew is willing to do, even the most non-religious, anti-religious Jews. As soon as they know that they're Jew, or the Jews that don't even know they're Jews, as soon as they know it, it's there inside them. That's what makes a Jew a Jew. Makes a Jew different from everybody else. Different from everyone else. By means of this raises up everything that you did in the week to the one God. If so, even your business, even the money that you make, the esek, and the work that you put forth in the week to earn money, this is something like God, what God does. That God on Shabbat, he takes possession of the physical heavens and earth. Therefore, that's what makes God like a brother to us. In other words, that we do what God does. On Shabbat, God takes possession of the world. The same thing when a Jew works in the world and he prays to God, as this is, so to speak, putting everything into God's domain, making us a businessman just like God is. And we're going to see the next one. That's what it means, I will kiss you. In Shir Hashirim, it's filled with kissing. That's how in fact, the Song of Songs, that's how it starts off. That's how the song starts off. It says, Shir Hashirim Asher L'Shlomo. Right in the beginning, the beginning, the Song of Songs, which is the King Solomon. And Yishakeni, he will kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, because your love is better than wine. What does this mean? We're talking about God. It says God will tell us the secrets of the Torah. That's what Rashi explains. He'll tell us the secrets of the Torah, etc. But now we're talking about how we and God can be brothers. And here we're talking about how we can find God and God will find us outside. And tomorrow we'll talk about how God kisses us. What does this mean? That's what it says in the continuation of the sentence. What does it say? Who will give, it should only be that you will be a brother to me. We will nurture from the breasts of my mother. I will find you outside. That we said before, that's the businessman, working man. Ashakacha, I will kiss you and no one will disgrace me. What does King Solomon mean? I will kiss you. This we're going to find out tomorrow. Now let's learn the Devar Malchut of this week. Talking about the making a holy temple and how every Jew is gold, and what this has to do with the happiness of the month of Adar. Ready? Let's go.